Yes, 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 it is I, the Nomad. I am here to give you the news and a little news roundup for Friday for you all. Hope that you all enjoy it. Please stay to the end because there's some wild stories at the end that I think that you all will quite frankly enjoy and such. So let's get started right away, shall we? Let's go right here and we'll bring up our little thing here. Where are we gonna go here? There we go. And we'll move our little symbol out of the way for everybody so that we can go ahead and read what's on the screen. From Yahoo News, folks. After Biden Xi called, U.S. warns China it could face sanctions if it backs Russia and Ukraine. Yes, China is shaking in their boots, boy howdy. Oh, Biden, who is so compromised, is absolutely terrified. Yes, he is absolutely terrified, Beijing. Xi Jinping is just shaking in his boots. Yes, U.S. President Joe Biden warned Chinese leader Xi Jinping on Friday of consequences. What? What consequences? If Beijing gave material support to Russia's invasion of the Ukraine, the White House said, while both sides stressed the need for a diplomatic solution to the crisis. While the White House did not detail what those consequences could be or how the U.S. would define material support, Press Secretary Jen Psaki indicated that China's massive trade flows could be impacted. Oh, no! Sanctions are certainly one tool in the toolbox because sanctions work so well. They're just shaking in their boots. They're just terrified. Speaking after a nearly 2-hour video call between Biden and Xi, Psaki said that the United States would communicate any consequences. Oh my goodness, folks. I apologize. Directly with Beijing, with our European partners and counterparts. What European partners? What counterparts? You mean the parasites? You mean the parasites that have been out there? I'm serious, folks. We don't have partners in Europe. We don't have partners or allies on the European continent. The only the only ally that we have in the region, the really good ally we have in the region, is Poland. I don't think Poland means much to communist China. Great Britain, and there's another one. Great Britain doesn't mean much to communist China either. Great Britain sold out its only ability to deal with China when it sold out the people of Hong Kong. I know a lot of you Brits don't like hearing that. But you sold out the people of Hong Kong. You sold them up the river. They were British citizens. They were British subjects. And you cut them off. That action ranks right up there, quite frankly, in my opinion, with our disgraceful frickin' pullout of Afghanistan. It ranks up there, folks. Well, Nomad, we had a deal. We had a deal that we would turn it back to Chinese territory. You had that deal with the Empire of China, not the communists of China. And if you wanted to turn it over to something, what you should have done is said, okay, it's part of Taiwan. That's what you could have done. And that's what you should have done, and that's what you didn't do. You sold out your own citizens. Millions of your own citizens. That we're not clamoring. Good evening, Sean. We're not clamoring for escape. Speaking, already did that. In the call, which came at a time of deepening acrimony between the world's two biggest powers, Biden detailed efforts of the United States and its allies to respond to the invasion of Ukraine, including imposing costs on Russia. He described the implications and consequences if China provides material support to Russia as it conducts its brutal attacks on Ukrainian cities and civilians, the White House said in a statement, adding that Biden underscored his support for a diplomatic resolution to the crisis. Meanwhile, what were the Chinese doing? The Chinese were busy sailing, okay? Yes, the Chinese were busy sailing a aircraft carrier through the Taiwanese Strait. Oh yeah. China is terrified. China is absolutely terrified. Yes, they're terrified of Joe Biden. He's a joke. He's an absolute joke. It's not even a clown show. The guy is so inept. And by the way, I decided to do a little bit of news on the U.S. first. For the most part, we're going to sticking with that format. Let's go to the next story. Because it's just about as hilarious. New Jersey lawmakers propose using civil forfeiture to fund diversity hiring. From Vice News, folks. New Jersey lawmakers have proposed a bill to use seized cash and other assets as funding to recruit and hire and train minority police officers. Oh yeah, this will work. Lawmakers in New Jersey have proposed a novel way to fix policing diversity problems using seized cash and other assets to recruit, hire, and train minority cops. The idea tries to accomplish some good with a widely despised policy known as asset forfeiture, which allows the government to take assets associated with crimes and not always return them. In New Jersey, for example, police can confiscate property valued at less than $10,000 in cash amounting to less than $1,000. So whenever they arrest you, they can seize your property. Now, if you have a car and your car is worth not worth a lot of money, $10,000 or less, these assholes can seize it. The state assholes. Okay? I want you to understand this. And even if, for example, now this is more serious than people realize. If somebody steals your car and then is laundering drugs, all right, or transporting drugs with your vehicle, or laundering money using your vehicle, and they seize it, guess what? There's no requirement for the police to return your car. If the jackass steals your car and then robs a bank, right, drives to the local bank, robs the bank, and in the middle of the pursuit stops this guy, they can seize that car and never return it. going to fix the policing problems, all right. Critics of the bill, however, say that that's dirty money. Even if it's used to fund a meritorious cause, it's still dirty. Introduced by New Jersey Republican Antoine McClellan in January, along with two other legislators. All right, we know those are probably Democrats, all right, because we'll spell out the Republican for this heinous bill. This shows you that Antoine has a problem. Assembly Bill 649 proposes that local prosecutors or attorney generals in the state should have the discretion to use the forfeited funds to increase the state's law enforcement diversity, one of the most requested and universally supported police reforms. Really? It will have zero effect. Training minority cops is not the problem. Hiring minority cops is not the problem. You have problems in police forces? You want to know why you have problems in police forces? You're hiring scum. You typically are hiring people too often that are amoral. Not always, but too many times. Too many times, the person who's getting hired is not a moral, upstanding person. And the result is you have bad cops. You also have friction when you have, quote unquote, quota systems for policing. And the system is it's very simple. When the guy sees a black police officer, all right, as a white police officer, and you see a black police officer, that for the first time, not knowing who he is, right? What's going to be the judgment of that white officer? He's going to believe that minority officer only got there because he was an affirmative action hire. Like Kamala Harris. Like this pedophile-loving frickin' judge that Biden has placed in front of everybody to say, hey, this is going to be a great judge for the U.S. Supreme Court. A woman who lets off pedophiles left and right as her judicial acts, who's been letting these predators back out on the street. She has a record, folks, and it's not a good one. But in a police department where you have quota systems, people are going to believe, rightly or wrongly, that the person across from them, unless they get to know them, was likely only hired because of the color of their skin. Not because of their merit. There are plenty of people out there that can serve from the minority community. You don't need a quota system. Never have needed a quota system. But I can tell you right now, what's happened now is what we have going on here in Tucson. Where we have a police officer, a chief of police, who is a minority hire, and I say he's a minority hire, all right, who's absolutely incompetent because he's part of the leftist cabal. We have murders, we have crime running rampant. It's at almost 70% higher rate than before he took office. And crime was already going out of control. But this jackass, we're getting worse and worse because of the police officers and because of the mayor. And this is happening in all liberal-run cities, and this is a blue city, ran by Regina Cami Moreno. And she's a communist. and her communist philosophies are to do this. And the result is, of course, crime going out of control. And what does this idiot do? He wants more diversity in the police force. That's going to fix the problem. That's going to fix the problem of murder on the streets. If the police force was more diverse, if we had more diversity training in the police force, murder would go away. Really? Is it the police running around killing people? Are the white officers running around killing people, all right, and stealing and robbing, and that's the reason that crime is so high, all right, because it's the police that are doing it? I think you have other problems, dude. Just put it out there. Former Trump official Mike Pompeo accuses the UK of paying $400 million blood money to Iran to secure the release of Ratcliffe, all right, saying that the cash will be used to terrorize the regime's enemies, including the United States and Israel. Why didn't you say Britain? Because they're going to be terrorized too, dumbass. God. Pompeo's a moron at times. He's better. Don't get me wrong, he's better than Kerry, he's better than Blinken, but he's still a moron. A former top U.S. politician accused Britain of paying blood money to Iran to secure the release of Ratcliffe. Mike Pompeo, who was Washington's top diplomat under Donald Trump, lashed out at the £400 million debt paid to Tehran in tandem with the British aid workers' release. Hey, Mike, don't get me wrong. I agree with you that the Iranians are going to use this to try and kill Americans and kill people in the West. Okay? But before you get too high on your freaking high horse there, pal, just remember, good old Biden and Obama gave them $1.2 billion, all right, in pallets of cash. Or did you seem to forget that? I agree with you. We never should have paid that either. I agree that it was absolutely ridiculous. But before you start hammering the Brits about some things, Mike, you might want to start going on telling me whether or not any of the people that were in the State Department at the time that deal took place, did you fire any of them, Mike? Seriously, did you fire, while you were in charge of the State Department, the jackasses who came back with the freaking policy on Iran? Everybody in that corps, that group that worked in the Middle East, every single one of them should have been shown the door. Did you do that, Mike? Then you are just as freaking complacent or just as guilty as these people are. Because they're the ones who actually came up with the policy, and they're the ones who actually pushed it through at the behest of Biden and Obama. Good afternoon or evening, Ms. Murder. You know what? We're going to do this a little differently. Let's go back to that. Macaroon. Yes, Macaroon. Oh, he's vowing tax cuts and a benefits shakeup in the election manifesto. French President Emmanuel Macron, who is constantly calling on Putin to please stop, all right, pledges to cut taxes further and to reform the welfare system and major public investments. As he unveiled his manifesto less than a month from elections, the 44-year-old had delayed confirming his intention to seek a second term until the 3rd of March. and had been at the heart of Western diplomatic efforts to halt Russia's invasion of the Ukraine. Boy, he's really kicked ass, hasn't he? Macaroon, he's not a parasite. He's just another parasitic leader, folks. We have more work to do, Macaroon told 300 journalists gathered at the venue in northern Paris suburb in front of giant screens showing his slogan, "I'm with you." Speaking for 4 hours in his first major campaign event, he announced... Who's going to listen to a jackass, anybody, for 4 hours straight? Speaking for 4 hours. That should have been your first clue that there's a problem here. He announced a program aimed at deepening pro-business reforms that started in 2017 to reduce drastically high unemployment. We have two levers, full unemployment and reforming the pension system, he said. Really, Macaroon. You've been so successful, haven't you? You've been so successful at taking care of your own country and so you decided to go, you know what, let's call up old Pooty Boy, all right, and see if he can do it. And then turn around and say, and tell everybody, oh, yeah, we were selling arms to Russia, but it's not illegal. It's not against the sanctions. These guys are parasites. They're absolutely parasites. Let's go to the Ukraine, right? Because we got some things to talk about. You have another bombing here. This is causing a lot of concern for people because they believe that this is a widening of the conflict rather than where it's focused at here. All right, you have the typical shelling by the Russians, all right, and the typical shooting down of a helicopter or two by the Ukrainians, okay. Up here is something of note, right, which is you are seeing a bigger push now, a more concentrated push, rather, right, by the Russians to seize this city. And once this city is seized, and you can see down here, these areas have now merged and they've cut off the supply route. Okay? All the major supply routes now into this Cherniv they've now been seized. All right? They are now under the control. All right? They've been broken by the Russians. The Russians have effectively cut off supplies to this area. Once they finish with this city, expect them, then you can expect them to start pushing down through here with a lot more force as they try to finish the encirclement of Kiev. Okay? The Ukrainians are fighting hard, but the reality is that the Ukrainians, they just don't have the capability. They don't have the internal infrastructure. And I'm going to say one more thing. I know a lot of people aren't going to like to hear this. Okay? But the Ukrainian military, everyone's talking about how these people are fighting for their lives and they're standing up. Look, the Ukrainian military easily could have been up over 150,000 troops active when this took place. Active. So in other words, from a troop level perspective, they could have been on par with what the Russians brought in. And they didn't. They weren't. And part of the reason for that, quite frankly, is due to the fact that it's not that the Ukrainians weren't trying. It's that many of the elements were a kind of like militia elements. That it's one of the problems with the Ukraine. It's not, the Ukraine isn't a country that it was fully all working as a solid nation state. You had a lot of local warlords or oligarchs. We'll use that term, oligarchs. That were a part of this. And unfortunately, it's causing a lot of harm. Back to the United States. More black Americans are buying guns. Is it driving up black suicide rates? Oh no! Black people have guns! We can't afford to have this! Is it... Are they committing suicide? It's the evil gun. They're trying to come up with so many reasons. Alright? I'm for 100% citizen ownership of weapons. Unless you have lost your right due to a felony of owning a firearm, I believe that every American should be armed. Yes. Every adult American should be armed. If you don't want to carry, fine. But I don't believe in these safe zones. I don't believe in this nonsense. I don't believe in this crap when they talk about, well, we gotta have these areas where we're these protected no gun zones. I don't believe in them either. Tell me why you need a no gun zone. Tell me where it's ever effective. With a bad guy isn't going to bring in a gun. Even in a courtroom. Even in a courtroom, all right, every legal, law-abiding citizen should have access to a firearm. They should be allowed to sit there. Well, I don't know, man. That risks, his friends and everything. And the perpetrator, you're saying the perpetrator? No, the perpetrator can't be armed. But everyone else should be. Everybody else. To include the judge. Just putting it out there. Now, what idiot wrote this? Alex Smith. Okay, well, Alex... When Russell and Sharon Lewis want to unwind, they pack up their guns, drive from their home to a suburb in North St. Louis to an indoor range called the Sharpshooter at the city's south side. Russell dons big protective headphones, carefully lays out his firearms, selects a Panzer Arms M4 12-gauge automatic shotgun, takes aim at paper targets, including one labeled snowflakes, and squeezes the trigger. Oh! So now we know what this is really all about. Black conservatives are running around with firearms. How dare we? It's just something about the power and being able to release that and let it go downrange, he said. It relaxes me. Charisse, Russell's wife, practices with her new handgun, a Sig Sauer P365. She bought it because she was worried about the increasing crime in her area. Good plan, because St. Louis is about as deep blue as you can get. The Lewises are part of a growing cohort of African American gun owners. Nationwide survey found that 25% of black adults owned a gun in 2021, up from 14% 6 years ago. Gun buying among African Americans has soared in recent years. At the same time, suicide rates have increased among young black men. Oh yeah, it's because they had a gun at home. It's the gun. It makes them want to kill themselves. I'm sorry, but that's just nonsense. Let's see what this rate is over a period of time, folks. Meanwhile, Pooty Boy. Putin says Russia will get rid of traitors like gnats. Russian President Vladimir Putin said that traitors to Russia would be spit out like gnats while speaking to government ministers on Wednesday about his war in the Ukraine. Thousands of Russians have been arrested for protesting against the country's invasion. You know what? A year before, thousands of protesters were arrested for protesting Putin in general. It doesn't seem like things have changed a whole lot. The only place worse than St. Louis is East St. Louis. I am convinced that this natural and necessary self-cleansing of society will only strengthen our country, our solidarity, our cohesion, and readiness to meet any challenge, Putin said, according to Reuters. Earlier this month, Putin signed legislation that penalized people for spreading fake news. At which point, every major U.S. news outlet ran like little bitches. Ow! We gotta leave Russia! Ow! Run! All right, folks. More for Putin. Putin's speech at a staged patriotic rally was abruptly cut off. The Kremlin claims it was a glitch. Thousands of flag-waving Russians crammed into Moscow's, I'm not even going to, Luzhniki, all right, stadium. The same arena that once hosted the FIFA World Cup finals. During a triumphal celebration Friday of the 8th anniversary of Russia's annexation of the Crimea. The event sharply underscored how much Russia, isolated by Western governments and shunned by global companies, has changed since 2018. When it opened its arms to a global soccer tournament. Folks, how has Russia changed? Seriously, and if you guys in the chat, if anybody's in there, how has Russia changed? Well, they went to war with the Ukraine. When they seized the Crimea, you know, which I believe was what 2015. So I think that's what it was, 2015 or 2014. Well, they seized it under the Obama administration, the Obama-Biden administration. Remember, it was Obama-Biden. See, when they seized the Crimea, has anything changed? And I want to say something else. He went into a gigantic stadium to give this big political rally. Now, I know a lot of people are like, well, so what? It's just like the evil days of the Third Reich, right? But the reason I point this out is because people constantly and continuously tell us all that Vlad is on his way out. The oligarchs they're not going to tolerate this. They're going to get rid of Vladimir Putin. They're going to do him in. He's on a shaky footing. He's not going to be able to survive. Folks, he's not worried about it. He's definitely not worried about an assassination by the Russians. You wouldn't appear in public like this if you were. He's not worried about that. You guys are these Western idiots, these Western supposed sophisticates, all right, that are all supposed to be supposedly experts on Russia and everything else, can't sit up there and look at simple little clues and understand, okay, well, Putin is not worried about his hold on power. Not at the moment. Not right now, and not for the foreseeable future either. Now, could things change? Yeah, they could. But I don't see it happening anytime soon. And the Russian tolerance for sanctions and pain, their own personal tolerance for sanctions and pain, is much, much higher, all right, than in the average Western frickin' self-deluded idiot. I don't know where we get some of these supposed eggheads that talk about, in our foreign policy part of the government, that talk about this shit and don't even, how obviously they are just lost in their own little worldview that doesn't match with what's happening. No, man, are you supporting Putin? No, I'm not supporting Putin. I'm just telling you, you better start taking your head out of your freaking asses and start realizing there's something called reality out there. And reality isn't what you make of it. Okay? Reality isn't your wish fulfillment. Oh, Putin's in a lot of trouble. Really? So you want to believe that in the world that Putin's in a lot of trouble. You want to tell me how that is? These oligarchs that have been running around the world that aren't in Russia, do you think Putin is worried about them? As far as he's concerned, you've left Mother Russia. There's no reason for you to come back. He's not looking upon them as going, oh, they got a lot of power. Sorry. They have a lot of power for what? How much power? I'm serious. How much power does a Russian oligarch actually have before Putin comes in there and says, okay, we're taking everything? Or do you think that he doesn't have that kind of power? Do you think Putin doesn't have the ability to walk in there and take all the power, everything away from the Russian patriarch? And these Russian oligarchs, right, that you're all talking about, you went out of your way to try and harm them out of the West. So they have nowhere to turn to. They have no one to turn to but Vladimir Putin. All these people that you're expecting to be a check on Putin, you are driving into his corner by trying to target these individuals. I'm going to seize this guy's yacht. That'll teach him. Boy, he'll hate Putin then. After you seize this yacht, you think they're going to blame Putin. You people are stupid. I'm serious. You people are stupid. Blinken and his whole freaking group of cronies, everybody in the freaking State Department that supports this, which is the majority of them, right? I guarantee you it's the majority of these assholes, right? And the ones that they kicked out of the intelligence department, intelligence fields, right? And the intelligence ones that are saying the same thing. Anybody from the intelligence group, U.S. intelligence, that tells you Putin's in a lot of trouble, start firing them now. Get rid of them now. Get rid of them now. Because they're useless. They're obviously wrong. All right? They obviously don't understand history. All right? They've never read history. They don't understand history. They don't understand what's going on in Russia today. I'm not saying that there aren't people that would love to go after Putin. Right? I'm just telling you that the Russian people as a whole are not willing to rise up and do anything about Putin. And what's more is the majority of these people, in my opinion, right now, from what I can tell, are supporting this. And so far, as much as heroic as the stand has been by many of the Ukrainians who are vastly outnumbered, and this is a problem. The Ukrainian people that are fighting for their country are vastly outnumbered. They're not just outnumbered in material and better weapon systems and things like that. They're vastly outnumbered, period, folks. That's why when they tried their quote-unquote offensive the other day, 2 days ago, it petered out in less than a day. 24 hours later, it was gone. It's unfortunate. And the reason is because they don't have the number of people necessary to actually repel this. They don't have a lot of the equipment. I'm not telling you that their equipment is the same, because the Russians have superior equipment. And yes, as much as people keep talking about this and trying to blow this up, Russia has air superiority. They don't have air supremacy. Okay? This is something that's different. They don't have complete control of the air, but air superiority doesn't mean you have complete control of the air. Air superiority means you can go wherever you want to go and do what you need to. Yes, you will incur losses. Okay? But they can do, and the Russians are proven they can do it time and time again. If you really want to know what's really disconcerting, right, is this. Russian drone flights into NATO skies test the alliance's red lines. The crossing of Russia's drones into airspace of NATO countries is emerged as a test of the alliance's red line and its support to the Ukraine, right, in repelling Russian invaders without triggering a wider war. Ukrainian military said Tuesday it downed a Russian drone as the unmanned aerial vehicle was returning after crossing into Polish airspace. Russia has not commented on the incident. Earlier this week, another drone suspected of belonging to the Russian military crashed in Romania. Allied officials said they are studying the incident. Now, one of the problems with knowing whether or not which drone is whose and who owns the drones is they're all using the same equipment, so it's kind of hard to know whether or not this is actually Russian or not. But I will make this point, and I'm going to be real blunt about it. The Allies, if they're going to be serious about defending NATO, needs to defend NATO 100%, which means when they fly a drone in, you have to take the drone out immediately. If a Russian drone or a drone from Belarus crosses into your airspace, you need to shoot it down. That's not a widening of the war. Drones get shot down by countries all the time without widening the conflicts. Just understand that. I'm not going to go any further in any more detail. I could. I mean, we could point out all sorts of times that things have been flown into airspace and gotten shot down. Like the Iranians flying their shit and getting shot down. Just one example. It doesn't lead to a wider war, unfortunately. And I say unfortunately because we needed to deal with Iran completely. All right. Detention of WNBA Griner extended to May 19th. Russian media reported that the detention of WNBA star Brittany Griner was extended until May 19th, a development that could see the two-time Olympic champion being held for at least 3 months before her case is resolved. The case of the 31-year-old Griner, one of the most recognizable players in women's basketball, comes amid heightened tensions between Washington and Moscow over Russia's invasion of the Ukraine. Griner was detained after arriving at a Moscow airport reportedly in mid-February after Russian authorities said a search of her luggage revealed vape cartridges containing oil derived from cannabis. Right? So hash oil. Or I guess not really hash oil, but same thing, right? Same type of mentality, right? Which could carry a maximum penalty of 10 years in prison. The court granted the request of the investigation and extended the period of detention of the U.S. citizen Griner until May 19th, the court said, according to the state news agency TASS. Leftists in America, especially the women's rights, the supposed women's rights advocate loons, right, are all up in arms, and they're all over Twitter, they're all over TikTok. Free Britney, and no, I don't mean Britney Spears. I mean free Brittany Griner. Free Britney. Hey, let me tell you guys something right now. Why she's only being held because she's a black? No. She's only being held because she's gay. No. Oh, excuse me. I guess gay is the wrong term. Queer, lesbian. I don't know which one. What attribute? What application do you want me to use, or applet, or do you want me to use? Right? I really don't give a shit. I don't. Use whatever the hell I feel like. Whatever identity that they want, I don't care what that identity is. Is she being made an example of by the Russians? Yes. Did she break their laws? Possibly. It's not outside the realm of possibility that the Russians, she didn't have these vape cartridges and that they just somehow mystically found its way into her life. It's possible. Right? It is something the Russians would do. I'll tell you right now. You can't put it beyond the Russians that the Russians would do something like that. It's also possible that Brittany Griner is a moron and brought drugs into Russia. Which, quite frankly, I think is the most probable explanation. Okay? All that being said, Brittany, honey, how you feeling? You wanted to spit on America all the time. Brittany Griner doesn't believe that the national anthem should be played at WNBA games, for example. How dare they play such a hate-filled rhetoric around you, huh? Hey, Brittany, how you feeling about America now? Tell me, should the State Department really be going above and beyond to try and get her released? Such a person who absolutely despises this country and has talked about her disdain for the nation on a constant basis. Now, why would she say things like that? Well, I'll tell you why. Her paycheck in the WNBA was, I think, about $500,000. I think that's what her yearly salary was on the WNBA, right? And she was in Russia because the Russian basketball team, the Russian Basketball Federation, right, has hired a number of players, and they pay them better. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. She was making over $1 million a year playing in Russia for the 3 years that she went. It's not an exaggeration. She was making more money playing in the Russian professional leagues than she was playing WNBA in America. Now, was this, like I said, are they trying to make an example of her? Yeah, Russians do that. I have no doubt in my mind that they're trying to make an example of her. And yes, they knew that this was coming. Now, she's 6'9". She's having a bad time finding a jail cell that has a bed to fit her. Is it ridiculous? Yes. Should the American consulate is demanded to be able to talk to her? Yeah, I agree with that. But here's a question for you. When you had this problem with China and a black, not even an NBA player, but he was a black collegiate player, or got in trouble, Trump went out of his way to bring him back. When a rapper, got into a fight in Sweden, Trump walked over to Sweden and said, yeah, no, you don't need to hold him. Let's bring him back. And got him out of those countries. So here's the question, folks. How come Biden can't do this? You know what? Why isn't Kamala going on over there and getting Brittany freed? They're so much better at, supposedly, they're so much better on foreign policy. They're so much better at foreign policy. Don't you understand? The Democrats are so much better at foreign policy. Democrats have never been better at foreign policy, ever. It's laughable. And the loony lefts, which are in charge now, that is the left in this country. The loony left that's now in charge of the Democrat Party, they're even worse. The non-American hating Democrats, the Democrats who didn't hate America back in the 60s and the 70s, yeah, those Democrats were stupid too. They weren't experts in foreign policy. In fact, the last actual success on a foreign policy basis that you can point to from a Democrat, quite frankly, is the Cuban Missile Crisis. And that's the only success. Other than that, can you point to a foreign policy success by any Democrat? Give me one. Now, this next story is a sad one. A child was driving a pickup truck that struck golfer's van in Texas, for those who don't know, killing 9. National Transportation Safety Board. A 13-year-old boy was driving the pickup truck that struck a van in Texas and killed 9 people, including 6 New Mexican college golfers, in a fiery crash, authorities said Thursday. The boy, identified in the Daily Mail as Ricky Siemens, was driving illegally on a spare tire before it blew out and the truck slammed head-on into a van carrying the golfers from the University of Southwest Tuesday night, said the National Transportation Safety Board Vice Chairman Bruce Landsberg. Now, the child has he died in the crash. His father, who was in the passenger seat of the pickup, he also died in the crash. This child has had issues, okay? His mother is devastated, right? Obviously. But I will say this, and I know people aren't going to like hearing this, but quite frankly, this happens more than people realize. Where 13-year-olds in rural communities are driving vehicles. Now, rarely is it something this serious. Okay? Rarely does it lead to something like this. But if a blowout happened on a spare, causing this crash, and who knows exactly how this came about exactly. All right. It's sad. It's unfortunate. But if it was an adult, is it any guarantee that this wouldn't have happened? No, there's no guarantee. But it is a better chance by somebody who is more experienced behind the wheel to be able to handle a blowout. Because the one thing you can't do in a blowout situation is you can't panic. Because you panic, you immediately oversteer. You immediately oversteer on a tire like that, and you are no longer in your lane, let alone anything else. For more laughable from the U.S. government, oh, I just love this. The IRS is outgunned in audits of major companies, said the agency chief. You guys are freaking holy shit. The IRS is outmatched. Huh. The IRS is outmatched in resources and expertise. How is it outmatched in resources? I would love to have been the congressman listening to this nonsense, all right, from this freaking buffoon. Because I tell you what, my comments would have been, you're full of shit. The IRS is outmatched in resources and expertise when it audits some of the largest companies in the country, the agency's top officials said. We do not have the resources to go after the bigs or the super bigs, as we refer to them. And we get outgunned routinely in that space, says the IRS Commissioner Chuck Rettig, all right, to the House Ways and Means Committee members on Thursday. I would have stopped the freaking hearing right then and there and said, you, sir, are fired. We are going to start impeachment processes to remove you now. The IRS has the full capability of the U.S. government behind them to say that they are out. Well, we don't know what these laws are. You got the Justice Department on speed dial. Don't give me this bullshit when we don't understand the law. Oh, you don't understand the law? Then you should be fired for being incompetent. The Internal Revenue Service, which is in charge of implementing and enforcing the nation's tax laws, has struggled for years to keep pace with increasingly complicated business structures created by teams of corporate lawyers and accountants. That's why you have your own lawyers and accountants. You have more and more. You're one of the largest agencies in the United States, and you're telling us you're outmatched when you can draw upon the Treasury Department and also the Justice Department to aid you in these things? The IRS has also faced a series of budget cuts. Really? Where? Show me where. Their budget has been increasing. You gonna tell me that Nancy Pelosi's backbreaking budget, all right, somehow is budget cuts now? And a wave of retirements as older employees leave the workforce. Yeah, those older groups are leaving in droves because they know what's coming. And it's going to be lawsuits and actual penal penalties, all right, once people really start finding out what you freaking criminals have been doing. And we know it's been impacted by them. We know it's been infested by these people. Because it was the same people under the Obama and Biden administration where they plussed up the IRS. And did they go after the quote-unquote bigs or super bigs? No. They went after the little guy, like they always do, with their audits. All right, we're getting toward the end of the stories here. I've only got, looks like 5 more. Woman dead after fight over bowling ball erupts into gunfire, Georgia police said. A fight over a bowling ball ended with a woman shot to death outside an entertainment venue in southwest Atlanta. Officers arrived at the Metro Fun Center, on the Metropolitan Parkway, just before 11 p.m. Thursday, March 17th. Reports of someone shot, the Atlanta police said in a news release. They found a woman with multiple gunshot wounds. She was pronounced dead at the scene. What began as a celebration at the bowling alley turned violent when authorities said an argument over a bowling ball spilled into the venue's parking lot. Now, I'm having a hard time believing that the people got into an argument over a bowling ball, all right, that led to multiple gunshots being shot into a woman. Okay? I'm having a bad time at this. It's truly an atrocity, said the Atlanta Police Homicide Commander Ralph Woolfolk. All right, according to the news station, a young lady has lost her life tonight as a result of an argument over a bowling ball. We talk about conflict resolution time and time again. And once again, this is an escalating dispute in which a young lady has lost her life over a bowling ball, Woolfolk continued. Okay, well then, if you're constantly talking about conflict resolution, if you're constantly putting in these policy stones, if you're constantly putting in these policies, all right, of saying we need to sit up there and come back with conflict resolution, and we need to sit up there and teach children, the little chillins, all right, about conflict resolution. If you guys are all about that, can you tell me why this has not been successful? Can you tell us, after all these government programs, why a woman is shot over a bowling ball, all right, in a deep blue city of Atlanta? And Atlanta's deep blue, folks. Can you tell me why that took place? Police haven't released the victim's identity and said that the shooting remains under investigation. Do you got the person who shot her? Can you tell us who shot the woman? Man shot by off-duty cop says he drunkenly walked into the wrong building. From the Daily Beast. He had no weapons. He's a father. He worked full-time. Now he's permanently disabled, said Jose Mendoza's lawyer, all right, told the Daily Beast. Last March, Jose Mendoza took a 9mm bullet to the face. The off-duty Chicago cop who shot him claimed Mendoza was trying to break into his home. But Mendoza, who remains jailed after nearly a year, says he was simply gone into the wrong building by accident and that surveillance video from the scene proves it. Mendoza, who is partially blinded by the shooting, was charged with residential burglary, criminal trespass to a resident, and home invasion, a Class 10 felony that carries up to 30 years in prison. Really, Mendoza? Sorry, Mendoza. Maybe the cops are too busy, you know. Maybe you're excuse me, not the cops, but the Attorney General's office, you know, with Fox in charge, Kimberly Fox. Maybe Kimberly Fox is focusing just a bit too much on Juicy to actually take a look at your case. Okay? The case made headlines in the Windy City and largely painted Mendoza as little more than a violent criminal who got what he deserved. But in a federal lawsuit in the Illinois federal court, Mendoza, 33, says he had been out drinking after work with a group of colleagues and mistakenly thought he was in fact in front of the front door of a buddy's place where he planned to spend the night. The video speaks loudly and clearly for itself, said attorney Jerry Bischoff, who represents Mendoza, all right, saying that Mendoza was clearly not committing a crime. He was supposed to stay at a friend's apartment not far from the building he entered. Red flags, folks. All right, not only did you walk into the wrong apartment, you walked into the wrong building. All right? The doomed interaction began shortly after 1 a.m. on March 31st, 2021, when Mendoza entered the lobby of the 3151 West Belle Plaine Avenue. I guess that's West Belle Plaine Avenue? In Chicago's Albany Park section. Footage from one of the building security cameras, which was released in November. Now, I have a question here while they're taking a picture of this guy as he's been shot. If he was shot in the head that blinded him, I'm kind of curious what exactly. Did they just hit the eye? Did they hit the eye socket? What is it that they actually hit? Because it seems like this picture of him is not doing him any justice. Well, it's not doing the cops any justice either. All right. Footage of which was released in November by the civilian officer of the Police Accountability Office, an official oversight board which investigates officers involved shooting and other use of force incidents in the Chicago police, shows a woozy Mendoza looking unsteady on his feet. He was wearing a jacket from his cable company where he worked. He sat down on the floor for a stretch. Then he stood up, leaned against the wall to steady himself, then sat on the steps for a few more minutes before lying down on the floor. Believing he had arrived at the apartment building where his friend resided, all right, he waited in the vestibule for approximately 10 minutes. At this point, Mendoza can be seen wobbling up 5 steps to the officer Ian Smith's first floor apartment where Smith was watching television with his wife and his 21-month-old daughter. Mendoza, who was unarmed, briefly began to turn the door handle of the apartment back and forth. You're not going to knock on your friend's door to let you in? Is this what you're trying to say? You wouldn't knock on the door? Well, I thought it was a friend's place. I'm sorry, but I have some doubts about this. As Officer Smith opened the door, Mendoza slowly stood up, the suit explains. He turned to face the Officer Smith, who immediately shot him in the face. Hey, it looks like a perp's coming at you. Now, this is a tragedy at worst. Okay? It's unfortunate. Upon being shot in the face, he fell to the floor and began to bleed out. Officer Smith never patted Mendoza down to determine if he was in possession of a weapon. The guy's there with his family and his 21-month-old daughter. Instead, as Mendoza writhed on the floor with a growing pool of blood, of his own blood, Officer Smith kicked him away from his door. Yeah, because that's what their normal process is. Now, it's a good thing that he's still alive, and unfortunately, from that standpoint. And I do believe that the prosecutors in this case could drop the charges against him. And probably should. Because, quite frankly, there's reasonable doubt, in my opinion. He has no prior record as far as from the article, right? So we don't know much more about this. But this is not a... This is a tragedy of somebody being drunk and wandering into another building, all right, not knowing where he was and banging on a door and being wrong. Or not banging on a door, just trying to open a door. Why would you do that? I hate to say this, but why would you try to be opening a door at 1 a.m. in the morning without knocking? If this guy had just knocked on the door and said, "Hey, man, where you at, Jack? Jack, I was supposed to stay here tonight." Nothing would have happened to him. I feel for the guy. I do. But I don't think the police did anything wrong in this case. Just my opinion. Danger Zone. Are you a dark empath? Scientists reveal new most dangerous personality type. Who paid for this? Who paid these scientists? I'm just asking. Recent research has found that individuals who boast dark personality traits, I don't think they necessarily boast them, right? Such as narcissism, can still retain high levels of cognitive and affective empathy. The study recently published in Personality and Individual Differences identifies these types of people as dark empaths. Empathy can be broken up into three categories. First is cognitive, which describes an intellectual understanding of someone else's feelings without sensing them. Next is effective, or feeling someone else's emotions as your own. And the third is compassionate, a combination of cognitive and emotional empathy. Right there, you said everything you need to know about this study. All right? Everything you need to know about it is written right there. Who paid for this? Most likely the government. Individuals are considered dark empaths if they possess cognitive and or affective empathy, as well as characteristics of a dark triad, a collective term for three dark personality traits: Machiavellianism, psychopathy, and narcissism. Traditionally, researchers have found that those with darker characteristics are often associated with a lack of empathy. And while this new data, which the researchers gathered from a group of 1,000 individuals, certainly reinforces that, it also indicates a strong presence of the dark empath group. As expected, we found that the traditional dark triad group with low scores in empathy, about 13% of the sample, the study of the author said. We also found a group with lower to average levels across all traits, about 34%, which were typicals. See, typical is only 33% of the population. All right, the majority are something else. Right? And a group of dark traits with high levels of empathy, about 33%, which were empaths. But typicals aren't empaths, apparently. We probably should call the 34%, when they call them typicals, we should call them what they really probably are: morons. However, a fourth group of people, the dark empaths, were clearly evident. They had higher scores in both dark traits and empathy, about 20% of our sample. Oh, no! Do you want to tell me why you think that these people are more dangerous? Oh, because in our study, the dark empath may actually be more dangerous than a more cold and unfeeling dark triad, because the so-called dark empath can draw you in closer and can do more harm as a result. In other words, why don't you just start, specifying things like vengeance? Right? I wonder if this next guy was a dark empath. I can tell you, I put him in the typical category. Because he's a moron. I moved into my work cubicle to get free rent, but got busted and fired. This TikToker is literally living and breathing his work. Chubazor Ejiofor, all right, who uses the name Simon Jackson professionally. Okay, why did you just start with Simon Jackson? All right, at least I'm gonna pronounce that. All right, made a now viral video of himself in his work cubicle, claiming it was a form of protest when he wasn't paid enough. The video earned about 2 million views since March 8th, but in a follow-up video, Jackson revealed that he had allegedly been fired from his job at the design and engineering consultancy firm Arcadius. In his initial viral video, hilariously titled check out my new apartment. The 28-year-old filmed himself setting up his desk with his clothes, toiletries, and other personal belongings. I'm moving from my apartment into my cubicle at work, he declared in a voiceover. They do not pay me enough to do both. So, as a matter of protest, I'm just going to live at my job. We'll see how long I can get away with this. Obviously not too long! You see why I put him in the moron category, folks? This guy... Why does filming yourself doing something stupid end in tragedy or end in consequences? I don't know, moron! If you film yourself doing something stupid, it shouldn't come as a surprise that there's a consequence. Oh my God. After setting up his mini pad at the Arcadius' downtown Seattle office, his stunt ultimately went awry when his employer forced him to leave 4 days later. But Jackson told the Post that while it was a protest, it was a matter of timing that inspired him to live at work. He said he had to move out of his apartment because his lease was ending and the rent was going up. Since he was in a rush to move, no apartments had accepted his application in time. The apartments were too expensive anyway, and I was denied a performance review by my employer, he claimed, which would have offered him a potential raise. When I found my company had an empty office downtown, this was the perfect solution as it was close to all the venues I frequent and it would be free. He noted that he felt his stay at Shez's office would have lasted indefinitely if only he hadn't posted videos about it. Probably! It probably would have lasted longer. I don't know if it would have been indefinitely, because sooner or later they would have moved into there and started asking me. Jackson, who also moonlights as a romper designer, what the hell is a romper designer? Can somebody tell me what a romper designer is? Claimed that he had been in communication with his former employers and colleagues, or he has been. Right? He said that he is not unique nor alone in my sentiment of being underpaid, since he claims several other former employees, not direct co-workers, but people who worked in different branches in the same company, also felt they were underpaid. Hey, well then why don't you all do a protest like that and see whether or not something similar happens? The business owner also discussed the situation with insiders, saying that he's taking his firing as an opportunity to get away from the corporate world. Ding, ding, ding. Don't they have cleaners come in at night that would have found him? This was not one of their offices that they were currently using. All right, so I assume that these offices were not being used. So no, there probably weren't people coming in cleaning. All right, this is probably due to downsizing, because the dirty little secret is Seattle is now a frickin' cesspool, and people are beginning to realize it, and they're fleeing. This is hardly a surprise to anybody. All right, final story of the day, folks. And if you thought the last story was stupid, now this story comes by way of, to be honest, Omegon. Yes, Omegon talked about this, but it has to be talked about. It needs wider distribution. A woman's UTI, urinary tract infection, for those who don't know, was actually a glass tumbler lodged in a bladder for 4 years. A woman whose doctors thought had a UTI actually had a glass tumbler stuck in her bladder for 4 years. The 45-year-old had come to the hospital complaining of typical UTI urinary tract infection symptoms such as leaking, but doctors were left stunned when scans revealed that there was a glass inside her bladder. It was encased in 8-centimeter wide bladder stone, which normally are so small they're hard to see at the naked eye. The woman from Tunisia revealed that she had used the drinking glass as a sex toy a number of years before and didn't think it getting lost up there was an issue. Really? Evidently, she had inserted it into her urethral, all right, the hole which females urinate from, rather than the vagina. Her case was published in the medical journal, including an astonishing scan and an image of the glass found in the bladder. Are you kidding me? Oh, the risky activity involves inserting a glass or object in the urethra, the tube that the urine passes through, to heighten sexual pleasure or arousal. You put everything in 8 centimeters. Now, 8 centimeters, all right, is just a little over 3 inches. Okay? Or around, about 3 inches, I should say. Okay? Is 8 centimeters about 3 inches. So, just a little over, I think. So this is probably like a small glass, like a shot glass, what it looks like, a shot glass. But if you take a look at this picture here, this looks a bit chipped. I'm sorry, but I think this woman had more problems. Oh my God. The report noted that motivations most frequently associated with the presence of foreign bodies in the bladder are of a sexual or erotic nature. Various objects have been inserted in the bladder, and many patients fail to remove them from themselves and are embarrassed to seek medical advice. Really? You have lost an entire shot glass up here. And you don't think this is going to cause you problems sometime later that you're too embarrassed to see the doctor then. You'll just wait it out. Oh. Most likely they had to go in and puncture the bladder, right? Cut open the bladder to take this out. Now, for those who don't know, taking the bladder and cutting into it is very risky. Okay, it's not something because of the way the bladder lining is. The bladder itself is a very thin organ, right? And of course it's expandable. It's very flexible. Part of that is due to its the thin nature of it. To put it back is very difficult. All right, to sew it up, and it's something that's 8 centimeters in diameter. She reported that she had suffered from inflammation of the bladder several times, but had never been investigated. She didn't have any blood in her urine, nor was she suffering from urinary incontinence. But she did have a higher than the normal red blood cell range, indicated the body was fighting an infection. In this case, they performed a surgery to remove the bladder stone. They then cracked it open to expose the still intact glass, all right, that had been in her body for years. 2 days later, the woman had recovered and was well enough to go home. All right. Folks, you can't make up these stories. They just continually to amaze me what people do. All right, everybody, that's all I got for right now. I hope that you enjoyed this little recap of Friday and the stories of the week. Hope that you all have a good day, and I'll talk at you all later.